episode 3 was, oh my God.
As a fan, I thought, wow. As a DP, I thought, fuck.
If you take Hardhome and you take Bob and you take the lake and you add them together, add a 5x4, you have episode 3.
We had 11 weeks of night shooting, so that was quite a feat for any crew to go through.
We knew this episode was going to be almost entirely battle. It's well over an hour, and it's mostly action, and part of what we cared about a lot here was getting Miguel on board and forcing him to shoot 55 straight nights.
Look at it this way, I never ever want to do that again. I don't think anybody who did that ever wants to do it again. Yeah, that was tough, and I don't think it was something that anybody really realized just how hard it was going to be.
The long night. When I was doing it, it was -14. Just chilling, -14. In a field. You know, it's too cold to snow. When it's too cold to snow, you know you got in trouble.
Chris and the rest of the team, they were there day in, day out, where you would start your evening at 6 o'clock at night, and then you'd go home at, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it just, that's brutal. Your body never acclimates to that 100%.
By like week 3, say, people looked slightly haunted. Cast, stunts, background, crew, like everybody just looked like this is like getting into us. This is like getting into our spirits.
I'm not gonna lie, it was horrible. We enjoyed the work, and I said to my guys, you might not want to do it again, but you won't regret doing it the first time. Because the product, what you've achieved, is amazing.
I think the crew, they enjoyed the result is, you didn't do all this and think that's not really impressive. There's no doubt about it, it's really impressive sequence. And I think the nights are just one of the things, we're just gonna get through this. It's just another notch in the belt of the crew on Game of Thrones, that they've done things that feel quite unique.
I'm proud of everyone. I'm proud of the work that was put in. I think it was a mammoth task that we were faced with, and we did it. And it just feels incredible. That first week after night shoot, seeing the crew, smiling at the sun.
What they went through was pretty stunning, and look, it's not, there's no special prize for being the toughest crew, but there probably should be.
Working in the pitch dark, in the rain, in the mud, it's a real testament to the entire Belfast crew who gave us something that no amount of money could ever buy.
The task that we had, which was the primary task on 3, is how do we keep this interesting? Because simply battle fatigue, you just get bored, you get exhausted.
We really wanted to make sure we were telling a coherent story with the whole thing and not just having battle beat, battle beat, battle beat. There needs to be a shape to it and a propulsion to it.
It became clear when we started planning it that the battle was going to be a series of concentric circles. It would be walls of defenses failing, and the dead getting closer and closer to the center and to the heart of Winterfell and taking over everything.
The way that I concepted episode 3 visually was to create a color scheme that developed through the whole episode. So it starts with a moonlit night. Because the Night King brings the storm and the clouds, the moon becomes dissipated and the moonlight takes over, but in a very diffused kind of way. And then the next stage would be the trench going up. We wanted the trench to be this overpowering light. And in prep for a long time, Miguel always mentioned hell to me. It's turning into hell for each character. So the blood red fire of the trench takes over the image and completely drains out the blue of the moon until the end. Because the trench is dying down, the moonlight suddenly gets introduced again. So that was kind of the way for me to break it up into sections.
So you have something that's visually different, so it's refreshing in that respect. But how do we take it one step further? And so what we decided was to give each act a genre. So basically, Act 1 is suspense and is build up. And the best way to do build-up is in any sort of kind of monster movie, which is what this is to not see the monster. Act 2 is actually from the moment that Arya is on the back foot and enters into the castle. That's the horror movie. And then Act 3 is an action movie. And so by breaking it into genres, it allowed us to change rhythm and go off on tangents where we followed specific characters for a longer period of time rather than worried about what was happening to everyone else.
The core of it is the people you care about. You want to care about the people fighting, so every effort is made to make sure that you center that conflict around the people you know.
And so whether it's Arya's storyline or Sansa and Tyrion down the crypt or Jon Snow and Dany up in the dragons, it's kind of like all these separate little battles within the greater battle.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
The living do have some time to prepare for this battle, and one of the things they know going into it is that they're going to be outnumbered, and another thing they know is that the Whites don't like fire. So they dig a massive trench around the entire castle and fill it with kindling.
To read the word trench on the page doesn't sound like anything, but it took such a lot of work to try and resolve it to a point that it was a convincing method of defence. It was important that this trench not be something that anybody could jump over, so we needed to construct these bridges that would then collapse and create another barrier.
The trench had real wooden spikes, real wooden logs lining throughout the trench. Then the real logs were replaced by steel logs that could burn over a number of weeks without burning away. It had to accommodate a whole special effects rig. So the considerations are enormous. And in the end, the trench sort of encompasses pretty much the whole of the castle. As trenches go, it was a good trench. And I've done some trenches.
Light the trenches!
And then the reality of how do you light 900-foot long thing full of bitumen with hundreds of people running at it and stunt people in it. Oh, I mean...
So...
The complicated process of the trenches began with the concept of it being a first line of defence. Therefore, it had to be impressive, it had to be very big. So we had to devise a way we could produce a flame which is big enough for outside environment. So we came up with a system which is just a simple water trough. It makes the most economical flame out of propane. And then, of course, you've got to think about the consumable part of it. You can't have real logs in there. It has to be a steel thing. It has to be able to endure the heat and the fire. I think we did 900 steel logs, and we did 16 steel troughs. And then you have to work out how you get that amount of gas to each trough. We've got one 4-ton tanker with a mobile unit, which is 5-ton. So with a combination of two, we convert liquid into gas, and that's what gives us our gas supply. We run it off an electronic valve system that's tied in with a firing box, and each one's ignited by an individual gas bang in a sequence. It uses a lot of gas,
Have you got your gas bill?
I've got my gas bill, yeah. I'm dreading that one.
And you see the Red Priestess come out and light that trench, that would be such an extraordinary moment as it just lights around Winterfell. In terms of imagery, I always thought that was such a fantastic thing. So you really were seeing for the first time the ice and the fire meeting. So that was something that I thought was a really lovely image to establish.
I got a call from Miguel like a year before we started shooting. Basically, he was like, I can't tell you anything, but get your endurance up now. I want you to be training. You have a lot to do. It's going to be night shoots. We're going to do 3 months of night shoots. And I was just like, okay. Like, I think I was like in Boston at the time, like eating like cheese fries. Like, cool. Fight through the battlements was just a real great moment, and everything that I have learned really did come down to that, and I did use every sort of skill that I'd learned in that fight.
It's one thing to go on the battlements, but then over the top of Winterfell, you've got these 2 staircases that go up to the middle section of Castellation. So we thought it'd be really claustrophobic and dark and scary to be in there with Weiss, but that's when the full staff doesn't really work.
We all know these tunnels are very small, and the last thing you want is a 5.5 or a 6 foot quarterstaff going through small little alleyways. So what I decided doing this one, be able to cut it in half, so I'd be able to disassemble within the fight sequence, and then have 2 of them so you could use both in each hand, which was great, and it gave also then the stunts something else to play with and to train with.
Yeah, because if I concentrate on doing the move, one of them does it and then the other one doesn't, and it's like...
One of the incredible things about Maisie is that she's a righty. Because Arya in the books is left-handed, she decided she was going to learn how to fight left-handed. So in season 1, when she's training with Syrio Forel, she's training with her left hand, and which is incredibly challenging. But what it did mean was that she's learned how to fight left-handed, and she's naturally right-handed, so she's become an ambidextrous fighter. And Maisie does almost all this stuff on her own. She has an excellent stunt woman for the dangerous stuff, but most of it's actually Maisie.
Her coordination, and she's really quick, you know, can make changes on the spot. She's really easy to work with.
It's one thing practicing a fight, which is like a sparring fight, you know? But then when you're actually fighting for your life with loads of stuntmen who like do this day to day and are not scared of anything, and they're covered in this crazy makeup and they're coming at you like, rah! It's just a completely different ball game. And I think I probably hold the record for the most apologies on set.
Fucking hell, I'm so sorry. Sorry, guys.
They're fine. They got pads on.
We knew any situation where lots of people are fighting, Arya needs to play a central role because she's one of the best at it. That's amazing, and it's a lot of fun to watch, but it's one note, and to try to play that note through the whole episode, it wouldn't have worked. So having her wounded and having her almost taken out of commission and almost rewinding the clock on who Arya Stark is would really be interesting. It would also give us a chance to change up the nature of the story we were telling.
The library sequence was built around the idea of I need to have a marked shift where the audience, instead of coming back and going, okay, and more battle, they come back and they go, oh, change the style. Hopefully what it does is it refreshes the audience, and they're like, you know, we want to know what's going on outside, but we're okay to be inside for a minute and slow things down. And we're also okay to be with Arya, who's suddenly, from being this incredibly confident character that she's been now for quite some time, is completely traumatized by what's happened to her. One of the things we did when we shot that sequence is we designed the library in a certain way, and then I took Maisie in there and I got 9 wights or something in there, and I gave them all a path, and then I told her she had to make her way through it without being seen. And we figured out this whole choreographed piece where everything was a near miss, and everything was just about not seeing, and everything had to be silent. And it was really fun to do.
Oh my God, I'm so scary.
So the hero White's in the library, a gal. He was after somebody who could get themselves into quite an interesting position, but have a physique which would be a little bit unworldly, which would suggest they're dead, basically. I knew of this performer, Spanish performer, called Javier Botet, and he's double, triple jointed. He can do the most ridiculous things with his body, and he's been covered in prosthetics pretty much all his career, so I knew he was the guy that could pretty much sell it for us. From a prosthetics point of view, he's got a couple of little bits and pieces. He's got some little cheekbone appliances. We've got a few little scrapes and wounds, and then we just did this sort of airbrushed body painting on him as well, and just really accentuated all his sort of shadows and all his muscles and his bone structure, and his movement just sold it for us.
We're all in love with Lyanna Mormont. I think the whole world is. So we wanted this to be her absolute heroic moment.
Oh, when I found out I was dying, it was the best thing, really. It sounds strange, but I either decided I'd be happy if I ended up on the throne, which I thought was very, very unlikely, or I had a great death. So I'm very happy. And the whole giant thing, that's just really cool.
Bang!
All the shots with Lyanna and Crumb were all really pretty complicated, and they all had lots of pieces to them. So it started out at Tomb, where we shot the Winterfell set, and we shot a lot of the backgrounds for the shots. And where we wanted to frame for the giant, we used this technology called in-cam, and this allowed us to play back sort of an animation of what the giant's performance would be that was synced to the camera.
And so that when Sean Savage, who's the A camera operator, is operating on the day, he can actually see the giant at his proper scale in the set. So they were able to operate it as if it was a real thing.
Hey, guys. Yeah, that's better, boys. Just smooth that out.
The giant is real. He could be 3D, but we prefer to shoot real, organic, live photograph people wherever we can.
Our giant performer, Ian White, who's 7'5", I believe, he performed all the actions of the giant in front of green screen, but we shot him in a way to double his scale. For the shots where he had to pick up Lyanna, we put tracking markers on a green doll that he picked up, and we motion captured that and would use it to drive a robotic arm, basically, to pick up our actress, Bella, and that would move her around as if she was being held by Crumb. You know, for some of those shots, there's at least 4 or 5 different elements that we've photographed at different times that will all go into making that final shot.
Really, it's just bringing the lowest techs, miniature props approach, and the very highest tech, digital scaling and digital handoffs.
I think it's very fitting for Lyanna to die, like doing something like that, stabbing a giant in the eye. It's a bit like, I realised today, it's a bit like David and Goliath, the same sort of thing. Like just a stab in the eye kills him. But with this little Lyanna moment.
Down in the crypt becomes just a complete horror movie. It's terrifying down there. We're in a crypt. Nobody thought of that. He's bringing all the dead people back to life, and they put the women and children in a crypt with all the dead people. So, rah. Tyrion is smart, but I guess not that smart.
Yeah, the whole action was really fun because I never get to do any action. In between setups, Peter and I would be joking around like guns, like running between the, podium to podium, trying to catch a white. We felt like action stars, even though we probably ran like 5 meters.
With the whites in the crypt, for us that was exciting because we realised we were going to do some really cool mummified and dried husky sort of whites. We referenced ancient mummies, we looked at corpses, and there are some tombs which have got these figures which are exactly the inspiration we were looking for, and they're these dried, wizened bodies which still have dried, encrusted skin all over them. They still have hair, and they're hundreds and hundreds of years old. They have their teeth, really, really dusty, and completely different to what we'd seen before.
There was one point where I had to like run through a crowd of people, and Weiss were coming out, and one came up to me and I actually started crying. I was so scared. Like whenever I get scared, I just cry, and it was so awful. Those Weiss are horrible, just as scary in real life. I hate them.
They're around dark corners, and you're like, you don't fully know where they're all coming from. I mean, everything's safe and mapped out, but it's still, you get into it, and you're just going by candlelight. We don't have any other lighting sources down there, really. It's creepy. It was fun. A week underground with dead people.
We're such nice people that, you know, it's just such violence that we're portraying, and I've often said, how did we end up here? I think the lesson that we learned on Battle of the Bastards was just how difficult it is to work with dead bodies, to work with these prop bodies, how expensive it is, how difficult they are to move around. So Rob Cameron and Gavin Jones, our prop maker, came up with the idea of moulding these bodies into these discs.
The brief was to try and create a lightweight version of bodies as a sort of relief. We would get 8 or 9 dummies dressed in their armour, and then we'd make a huge mould of that. So our mould could capture all of this detail. The limbs and the fabric and the armour.
Had, I think, probably about 300 body parts, which we would have painted up in different elements, you know, give them some skin tone, give them a bit of a palette, and individually pull out each body.
And the good thing about these, the weight of them, we can actually mound them up. So the prop boys came up with this great idea of wedges and then building them up. So it's total carnage and devastation, really. It looks great.
I've got to say, they work really, really well. The prop guys will never want to see another one of these discs again, because they spend a hell of a lot of their time walking them around, moving them from the right flank. Okay, now we've got to dress the left flank, so all the bodies have to move across to the left flank.
Fucking hell.
For close-up stuff, interspersed with that would be live people dressed as dead bodies. When you walk on set sometimes and they're about to shoot, and suddenly one of them will twitch or sort of move or something, and it's like, oh my God, because that's actually an extra who's being dressed as a dead body and will sort of be in there in amongst the ones that we've put in. Yeah, it's very disconcerting. It's a strange place to be.
Last third of the movie, where we move into an action film, John realizes that the real task still at hand is to essentially protect Bran.
Bran! No!
And so he heads into Winterfell, and we follow him on a journey.
We've used Artemis Maxima. It's a handheld device. Either the camera operator or the grip can carry it, and then one of the camera operators will operate it remotely. You know, it's like a remote-controlled Steadicam, really. It's very clever. The camera flows through the castle and stays with the character. I think the audience are going to feel like they're traveling with them and, you know, right up front with them.
That was the real kind of heart of, I think, that episode is that long sequence with all those different characters.
We needed John to make his way through the courtyard and bear witness to all of the characters that we know and we care about, that he knows and he cares about, being overwhelmed. What we essentially did is we took each group of people and we gave them all a fight. They learned the fight, and then we shot the fight, and then we used little pieces of it. They were all losing battles.
Yeah, I got to do like a flippy move, but to fling my spear like around my head. I like doing that stuff. Bit of flair.
I loved filming the sequence where we are really up against it, and it is overwhelming for Brienne, and Brienne is in battle mode. It was really all-encompassing that night.
Being there was so intimidating, and so, you know, we were all really panicked by how claustrophobic it was, and I think that really adds to the work.
One of my highlights from that episode was standing on the pile of bodies and fighting for my life. And the funny thing was that we said to the stunt guys, if you manage to get me down, take me down. So on some takes, I died, or Dormant died. I was really fighting for my life, for Christopher's life. Strong arms now.
One of the shots that I really love there is Jon looks over at sees his best friend being attacked by all these whites, and in any other circumstance, Jon would of course rush over to try to help Samwell.
It was great because it was this idea of Sam being one person Jon has always gone back for, has always relied on, has always been his true friend, and that he had to sacrifice him to go after the Night King. And then it was finalized with a moment where, at some point, we just ran out of stunt guys to throw at Sam. And so he sat there and he just started crying. And it was great, because it truly was crying amidst all this violence. So seeing Jon do that with Sam, I thought was a really, really great. Again, he felt true to the character.
If you're involved in a battle scene, you like to see yourself as a fighter, and you like to make it look as good as you possibly can. And Miguel was the one who had to keep reining me in and say, remember, you're playing Samwell Tarly, and Samwell Tarly is not a fighter. The reason that Sam is in there is because he's not a fighter, and it's because he can show how normal people would cope.
So we had to really dull him down, and we just make it in such a way that we wouldn't allow him to be cool. We've just put him under so much pressure, which is not fair to him as a person, because we could do it to everybody else too. We just don't. We just, you know, we make Kit look really cool. We do, you know. It's all right. What can we do to make Kit look cooler?
One of the most challenging shots is when we travel through the courtyard extensively, and then we head down to what we used to call the old kennels. And as he's running down this very long, dark corridor, we had to coordinate about 15 stuntmen dropping out of the roof around him. They're obviously going to arrive in a certain zone, certain moment, certain second, which, between the stunt guys and Kit, they had to coordinate perfectly.
Up against the wall, now put it on his neck and then drag it out. But take your time. I wouldn't kill him. I wouldn't kill him until you see the next guy.
And everything was really based around the idea of, like, how can we make it feel as messy as possible?
But then we had to obviously put one of our stabilised handheld rigs behind him and still stay really close to him to make the audience feel that jeopardy, the danger of what was happening.
After we've choreographed it and rehearsed it, what have you, when we're shooting it, you know, my job is the safety of it and also making sure that it all works. Then I'm cueing, because obviously we all need to be in sync.
That was probably one of the greatest challenges, just to be in the right time at the right place, and it had to be in, you know, fractions of seconds to do it. And the camera did 180 round him at one point during all this chaos. And we run backwards at that point until a great big steel door is iron railings are shut right in front of these guys, you know, at the last second. And it feels like Jon Snow's just got through there, as has the camera's just got through as well. So, yeah, it's a very cool shot.
Let's come here. Just because we fancy making you do it again.
But ultimately, the key thing there was to give Kit the fight of his life, and then at the end of it, present him with an insurmountable odd, which is a dead dragon, or an undead one, or not dead.
Zombie dragon lands, having his face been torn off, can't exactly see, smashes through the ravenry. Just an insane fight where Jon is ducking behind these pieces of set as this icy blue fire is blasting over the top of him.
But the fun thing is that Viserion is so damaged by this point. He already has a hole through his neck from being taken down by the Night King. Now he's missing half his face, so he's leaking. So, you know, this blue fire is kind of leaking and shooting around.
There's fire blasting all over the place, which we shoot photographically for real using a 3D motion control camera, blasting fire in a darkened stage.
We actually did laser cuts for Viserion from the digital model of those openings, and then bronze casts were made and then fitted by Sam Conway and his team with fire jets. And then that was put onto this robot with the quick arm so that the fire would leak out of openings that were accurate to the dragon.
There were so many moving parts in this scene because you've got the environment he's living in, which is partially the courtyard dressed and largely virtual because of the destruction that's needed to be created. There's shooting Kit in the set piece so that he's got something to really duck behind and have interactive lighting wrap around him.
We did a lot of destruction in that courtyard. We like building things, but equally we like destroying things. That's always quite good fun. So we go at it with flamethrowers, paint, earth, mud, you name it. We just take it in there and do whatever it takes to destroy the thing. I asked for a load of wood to be removed. We made a huge bonfire of it. We burn it for about a day until it's charcoaled, it's almost destroyed. Then actually you get something rather beautiful. It's rather wonderful.
Just when you think that it's all over, and just when you think that Jon Snow's gonna be the hero again, we realise that Arya peers through the mist.
You're like, oh, maybe I'll get him. I'm not gonna get him. And then you're reading, you're like, oh, maybe Jon's gonna get him. Wait, he's not gonna. And I remember actually being like, whoa! And kind of applauding in my head and then being like, yeah! And then in the read-through when Maisie was doing it and we were all just like whooping and cheering. Yeah, it's amazing.
I think Maisie thought it was super cool. Like, she's like, yeah, I can kill him. Kit was really fine with it.
I was pissed. I was pissed that it wasn't me killing the Night King. I would have given you I'd have bet you thousands before we read the finals. I was like, yeah, it's definitely me. And then they lead you on that Jon's chasing the Night King.
Jon Snow has always been the hero, the one who's been the savior, but it just didn't seem right to us for this moment. It's probably 3 years now or something we've known that it was going to be Arya who delivers that fatal blow.
Dan and David let me break all the Game of Thrones rules for that sequence. Majority of it is shot at 96 frames a second. It's all super slow motion. It's all heightened reality, which is not what they usually do. It was a surreal nightmare. Finally, the Night King and Bran were finding each other. The music plays a big part in creating that sense of despair that should exist in that moment. And you're intercutting with Jon, who's clearly not going to make it. And you're intercutting with all our other characters where they're so fucked. Everybody's fucked. I mean, that was the phrase we kept using. It's like, let's do the it's fucked shot. And then everyone would shoot a shot where it just was like, there's no escape. Everyone's going to die right now. And you know they're not, but we want you to feel that same feeling of, oh my God, it can't. What's the recovery? How do we come back from this? And we've all forgotten about, you know, that little innocent girl from all those years ago who's turned into a train killer who's coming out of nowhere.
Essentially, she does jump out of nowhere, and that's a wire rig. It's a wire rig we did on the location, but the location wasn't ideal. It was really hard to get a crane in there, and we've obviously got the weirwood tree. So it was tricky to do it there, and we did a version of it there, but then we had to redo it because it didn't have the ability to control it as much as we'd hoped. and it needed to be a real boom out of nowhere moment and a real, you know, a locking together of these two characters.
Shooting that was tedious, but so great to be able to perform all these different beats within maybe like 2 seconds of footage.
We knew it had to be Valyrian steel to the exact spot where the Child of the Forest put the dragonglass blade to create the Night King. And that weapon has been one of the totemic pieces for us, and ultimately we've known for a long, long time that was gonna end the Night King.
When Samwell's reading the book about dragonglass, there is a picture of the dagger.
The Targaryens used dragonglass to decorate the weapons, without even knowing what the first men used it for.
It is very possible that the same thing that created the Night King is the thing that was necessary to destroy the Night King, or maybe it's Valyrian steel, or figure it out for yourself. I'm not gonna say.
But I think that's such a nice little full circle thing as well, that that's the knife that was destined to kill Bran, and here it is saving him. Yeah, it's like an iconic moment. You know, the fall of the dead.
It's exactly what you need. Like, out of the air, she like takes him down. It's so good, it's so good. Perfect.
I think it's an inspired move. You've always been waiting as to what purpose Arya's assassin skills are going to lead to, and it's for the most important purpose.
Reading what I get to achieve and Arya's whole purpose in this world and everything she's trained for comes down to this one episode. It's just amazing. And it was beautiful. It's poetry. And I'm grateful that it was me and not Kit.
Think about Jorah. From the very first time we met him, he was with Dany, you know, and the first time you meet him is at Dany's wedding when he's giving her the books of Westerosi history. And from that time, he's been mostly by her side. If Jorah could have chosen a way to die, it would have been protecting Dany.
There was a lot of input from Ian and from Emilia about making sure that their characters stayed true to who they were, not having Jorah lose sight of his goal, which is protect his queen at all costs.
Emilia didn't want to be completely damsel in distress. She didn't feel that her character would be like that, but then we'd never seen her do anything in that vein. So we needed to make her not look like she was completely ineffective and disinterested in saving Jorah.
And then you don't care what happens to Sword off.
No, that's why I'm trying to play up the...
But also, this was Ian's big moment.
We realized that all he ever wanted to do was to serve her, and all he ever wanted to do was to fight to protect her. And there had never been a moment where she more needed someone to fight to protect her than this moment. And Ian himself, I think he was happy to go down fighting because he's very good at it.
My favorite scene to shoot was my demise. Yeah, just because it required most of me, was the most demanding and most fulfilling scene. And it felt the right conclusion for Jorah's role, and being given a very good setting, a very kind of dramatic and telling setting.
Incredible performance from Ian, and also from Emilia at the very end there as she's holding him in her arms, and just that, you know, it's really hard to fake that kind of pure grief, and Emilia just really brought it in those moments. I think part of it was because she's such a good actress, but part of it is because she and Ian have been working together for so long and have become very, very close, and they've had so many scenes together, and it's all coming to an end, you know, both their characters' relationship on the show, but also our time together working on the show.
It was really hard. You know, I just had to look at Ian's face, and it was like it's all there. It's all there. It's our relationship. It's like the whole. You know, we've been with these characters for so many years. We've been like to hell and back with them.
It's been quite a journey. No final words. No. It's just great fun, and yeah, I was so really very, very chuffed to be a part of the whole mad, wonderful thing of it all.